In 2016, I applied for a Texas workforce grant in order to study to become a pipeline inspector. My hope was to become an inspector of either gas and oil pipelines or water pipelines for a variety of reasons. I received a grant by the middle of December of 2016. In fact, it was confirmed on December 12th of 2016. It was sent to me with a password encryption. I opened it up, I looked at it. But the specific program that I had been accepted for involved travel to a location that did not have accessibility via public transportation. And because I could not have transportation arranged to have my schooling completed, I was not able to go to that particular program. I was told in 2017 I would have to reapply for another grant. I ended up receiving that to study at a private facility that provided instruction in non-destructive testing, which I was told could be a means by which to acquire access to professional training so that one could become a pipeline inspector. That grant was not sent with a password encryption. The first grant, I understand, was given to somebody else using my identity. And ever since then, I've recently perused information in a 2011 update to a 2006 piece of congressional legislation involving pipeline safety, specifically for the gas and oil sector. In this specific bill, it describes an outlay process connected to training, certification, and follow through on assessments of jobs for specifically gas and oil pipeline inspectors. The terms that were identified in that specific piece of legislation, in conjunction with other areas I have seen in appropriations bills that I have already examined, let me know that when I entered that school for non-destructive testing in 2017, it was a bit different than when I had been given that grant in 2016. There was a strategically coordinated effort to obstruct my capacity to deliver on the grant that was provided in 2016. And these timelines were intentionally orchestrated for a particular reason. Somebody qualified at a certain level, but then was not available. So somebody else that didn't qualify at that level in that sort of priority or at that standard was allowed to be able to move forward. By the time I did get capacity to go to a program that I was able to get funding for, I was homeless. I was required to find some other arrangements when it came to my food and my hygiene accommodations. And I was provided with no actual meaningful transportation, which impacted my capacity to get there, commensurate with what I had at the time I was accepted in the school. Not only that, but the time frames and the implications were different. I contend that if I had been able to enter the program when I got the original grant, and the people I met at the next program had been able to do their instruction and their schooling on the time frame they wanted to, as opposed to me knowing that at least 3 people I was in class with had to delay their schooling, as I did as well, by several weeks because of either a medical incident or supporting somebody with a medical incident, alleged medical incident, by the way. That ended up impacting timelines. And it was as if there was some sort of sector-wide lien put on our instruction that somebody else availed themselves of. And where are we today? Well, what's been happening is repeatedly accusations and actual acts of industrial sabotage have been allowed to occur, and mischaracterization of the actual events have been allowed to accrue so that companies materially responsible for pipeline safety and management can do what? Well, it was an industrial accident. Nobody wants to talk about intentional acts of sabotage or the impact it has on the concurrent processes of attempting to alter the states of mind of people involved in industrial inspection. When you kidnap somebody and send them to an alleged mental health treatment program for observation, and then tell them they're required to take medication as part of that treatment, including medication aimed specifically at altering their consciousness and impacting their neurochemistry right before they begin a process of study when it comes to inspection of industrial materials and industrial processes, that says something very profound about your infrastructure priorities. And that has been going on continuously for at least the last 4 years without any abatement. Not only that, but there's been a serious and significant deterioration in considerations of standards, not just regarding documentation, but also authentication of the actual individuals and personnel actually qualified for those positions. Now, my intention was to be an inspector of gas and oil pipelines and or water pipelines. But once I began the instruction, I realized that there were a variety of industrial uses and a variety of possibilities for people with that kind of training, including in aerospace and including when it came to the nuclear energy sector. That also includes things having to do with defense article production. And so for one to say that you're going to offer training to someone after intentionally sabotaging the process whereby they enter into that training says something very profound about who you are. That you're trying to discuss matters related to workforce development or job security for people at any age, when you refuse to attend to actual crimes that happen in that process, especially at that level of risk. And that's been going on for these entire 4 years. I had to reacquire my birth certificate after it had been stolen from me, following my efforts to turn in a report that I had been working on in connection with fraud and allegations of fraud. When I acquired a replacement birth certificate, there was a process whereby the birth certificate and the process of acquiring the Social Security card at the same time were put through a systematology where extra electronic accounts were set up in connection with my Social Security card. I was given more than one electronic account number when it came to my online digital Social Security profile. I attempted to report this. I attempted to address this. Nobody seemed to think it was a problem. Everybody I talked to, even if I went on site with the evidence in hand, refused to even acknowledge it. At some point, very shortly thereafter, even that was stolen. Within a very specific time frame, I find the metrics associated with those 2 extra accounts connected to reports for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I am not going to go into more details, except to say, yes, you intentionally trafficked me and the people I went to school with and trained with when it came to inspection of industrial materials and facilities in order to allow for people who are unqualified to have access to industrial processes and technical training associated with the nuclear energy sector. And I know how you do it. And I know what you think it takes in order for you to be able to get access to that level without going through the process of qualifying for yourself. It is absolutely unacceptable. And right now, what is going on is another country that actually has a nuclear energy paradigm is being sanctioned in a manner that fits this pattern. Your nuclear sabotage has caught up with you. It's that precise. You literally waited to the 3rd anniversary of those fraudulently opened electronic accounts associated with my identity in connection with a birth certificate you allowed to get stolen in order to sanction a country that you had already been increasingly sanctioning. And in a very strategically correlated pattern. It has nothing to do with any derivatives. And I contend doesn't even have to do with the people you're sanctioning, except that you're trying to use them as derivatives to get to someone else in your own country. Someone else in your own country, because the problem with political corruption is here. What justification is there to be sanctioning people alleged to be involved with interest in another country in a strategically correlated paradigm that matches with your refusal and your failure to prosecute political corruption at the specific time frames and with the specific metrics associated with allegations of your crime? And that's exactly what's happened. That's exactly what that letter yesterday was about. That's exactly what this 3-day later notice is about. What are you planning to convert that certificate into? What are you planning to convert that certificate, that 15-year certificate associated with the original sanctions or the 2006 sanctions on Belarus into? And on what timeline are you working, especially in connection with the other mitigating factors? I said last year, I let everybody know who I possibly could let know that what the ASNT did with its standards around personnel and testing for personnel and non-destructive testing was absolutely egregious. It is a standardization of human trafficking. And it appears what you're actually doing is trafficking people that would do it legally, that would do it legitimately. People that would actually go through, get the training, moderate or modify their own lifestyle and their own behavior, go through the appropriate processes in order to clear, in order to get the security they need, would agree to do things within a certain context, may even agree to a specific kind of confidentiality when it came to industrial security. But you've already determined that certain human and political capital, including that which is very important for national and international security, should be allowed for illegal expropriation by people for completely, purely political reasons, including political reasons that compromise the constitutional rights of scores of people in order to cover up for corruption by people you've allowed to stay in public office for way too long. You have people that have been in political office straightforward my entire life. I'm 44 years old. For at least 35 years, the same people have been in Congress, have been in the executive branch, and I can't even get certifications in a technical training program and on-the-job experience because you've already allowed for options to be set up on intentionally sabotaging my pursuit of those for somebody else's who? Who would have an interest in taking somebody that was selected when she was below the age of consent to be made available for appropriation for somebody else's needs, including political needs, when she engaged in a course of study around non-destructive testing to be an inspector of gas and oil pipelines and or water pipes? It's a literal question. Are you disappointed with my efforts to try to pursue recourse, including through or even as an attorney general? You may well be. I had every right to such a pursuit. Other people have the rights to such pursuits. You have no right to try to continue covering up for this conspiracy. This is absolutely 100% nuclear sabotage. And the way you're trying to mask it is in acts of sex trafficking. Why is somebody that feels that they're qualified to be the president of the United States allowed to engage in acts of overt sex trafficking? We are now 3 presidents in. 3 presidents into me personally being put into a position where I am sexually extorted just to get my basic resource needs met. I'm sorry. I apologize if I was just supposed to be destitute and homeless this whole time, and I wasn't supposed to do something as completely ridiculous as try to get certification in an industrial technique or try to actually file a petition with the court in order to bring criminal charges for racketeering. I apologize, except I don't. You got the White House, and you can't do anything close to that. The person who was in the White House and got it before you didn't do anything close to that. And the person who was in there for 8 years before him didn't do anything close to that with the White House. And I haven't been allowed to have a lease the whole time. You all have been trafficking me to be in the White House. I think it's time you get out. I think it's time you get out, and I think it's time that all the charlatans on Capitol Hill that have been covering up for you get out. And I think it's time for you to deal with security in your own country instead of trying to meddle with people in other countries and trying to strip down people in other countries to launder money to cover up for your crimes. Because while you're laundering money from people in other countries to cover up for your crimes, What you're also doing is keeping people from within your own country from being able to take care of themselves. And that's unacceptable.